Hi guys, Robbo46 here and welcome to my race results and analysis for Sunday's MotoGP race at Aragon. And oh my, was it a hectic race. We've had some hectic races this season already. Sachsenring springs to mind, especially when all the riders, well, 3/4 of the field had to start from pit lane. But this one, I think this is probably the most hectic race we've had this year. As it started off as a dry race. There were a few damp patches here and there, but there was a completely dry racing line. Moto3 and Moto2 made the dry racing line, so when it came round to MotoGP, yeah, they had pretty much a full dry line all the way around the track. It was Marc Marquez who started from pole position yet again, but when the lights went out, it was actually Andrea Iannone started in second, who got into the first corner first. Pretty much led the whole of the first lap. Marquez did get past him just towards the end. Well, actually, it's the start of the second lap that he got him, because Iannone's Ducati in a straight line is pretty damn quick. But yeah, he got a good start. Lorenzo got a good start into third. Pedrosa got a decent start, as did Rossi, but Rossi was about fifth, stuck behind Polo Spagro for a little while, and a little gap did open between Pedrosa and Polo Spagro. But yeah, Iannone started to go backwards, and then unfortunately for him, due to the tricky conditions, after about 5 laps, he went slightly wide coming out of a corner, which meant they went over the curb and hit the wet AstroTurf, which was full of water. Obviously the rear wheel spun up, snapped sideways. He managed to hold on to it, but then he was on wet grass on slick tyres, and I feel really sorry for him because there's nothing he could do. He didn't touch anything, he's just trying to ride along the grass, but it was quite bumpy and the rear just came round, and he had to just slide off the side of the bike. And he's really lucky actually, because his bike dug in and went up in the air and done a lot of damage to the bike, and it was pretty close to hitting himself as well, so he was lucky in that respect that he didn't get hit by his own bike, but unlucky for him because he was looking pretty good this weekend. So he went down the road, he was the first crasher. Cal Abraham, he crashed on the same lap, so his race was over. But towards the front, the gap was opening up between Pedrosa and Polo Spagro. Rossi was being held up by Spagro, was struggling to get past him, did eventually get past him, and pretty quickly started to close down the gap to Danny Pedrosa. Maybe a bit too quickly, because unfortunately, after about 6-7 laps, Rossi, I don't know whether Pedrosa braked a bit early or if Rossi just outbraked himself slightly, but he basically almost went straight into the back of Danny Pedrosa, had to take avoided action, went on a curb, of course couldn't put his brakes on, and then ran off track. Wasn't the gravel, wasn't grass, but it was wet out there, and he had to hit like the one really wet patch when he was trying to turn around, and ended up high-siding, and in fact knocked himself out, had concussion, and then came round. He did get stretchered off, but he did go to the medical centre, and he has no injuries, and he's fine. But such a shame, especially after the result he had at Misano winning. But unfortunately, it's just the way it went. Meanwhile, at the front, Lorenzo hit the front, got past Marquez, and Lorenzo was looking strong. Like, he was looking like his old self. Few battles going back down the pack. Crutchlow and Bautista having a little ding dong as usual. Dovizioso, he was doing quite well in 5th, top Ducati at the time. And it was Lorenzo and Marquez started to slowly pull away from Pedrosa. But later on in the race, Pedrosa started to catch him back up. Marquez decided to go into the lead, but Lorenzo stuck with him. And then Pedrosa caught back up to Lorenzo. Lorenzo decided to hit the front again, and then they had a few exchanges of places over the next few laps. Stefan Bradl, he was moving up the order, and Scott Redding, he wasn't doing too bad. He was just outside the top 10, and then about 5 laps from the end, all hell broke loose. I mean, when they were on the grid, it did start spitting with rain, but it was very light and it wasn't going to cause any disruption, so it was declared a dry race. But yeah, 5 laps from the end, it started absolutely pissing it down, and it was getting wetter and wetter lap by lap. You could see the spits of rain. Actually, it's probably about 7 laps to go. You could start seeing the spits of rain on the camera, and it didn't look too bad. There were a couple of sections on the track that were getting really, really wet, and they had to go careful around there. Lorenzo went back into the lead, done what he could. He had a bit more confidence in Marquez and Pedrosa, but then Marquez, after a few laps, went back past Lorenzo, and this was when the track was completely soaked. And bear in mind, they were all on slick tyres, and with slick tyres, they're fine as long as you keep heat into them. But as soon as they lose heat, that's it, they're useless. And the thing with slick tyres on a wet track, if there's like puddles or standing water, I mean, the contact patch of the front tyres on a MotoGP bike is about 1 inch, so it isn't much at all. And when there's standing water, it's not actually in contact with the tarmac, so you've got no grip whatsoever. Lorenzo decided that he was quite happy to finish 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th, so he backed off quite a lot, and some of the riders started coming into the pit. Elise Spargaro, Cal Crutchlow, and a few other riders came into the pit to change bikes. And a lot of you might be thinking, well, you know, by the time they're doing this, there's 5 laps to go. Yeah, there's 5 laps, but they're not going to red flag the race because it's a flag to flag race. So when it starts raining, they don't stop it. And with 5 laps to go, a few people tried to gamble. Dovizioso, unfortunately, was the first to fall to the really bad conditions. He ended up crashing out. Then you had Lorenzo dropping further back, but he eventually came into the pit, and with 4 laps to go, the Hondas decided to stay out. Marquez did let Pedrosa and Lorenzo pass him because he wanted to see what they would do, but then he decided to go into the lead anyway. And then he decided to stay out as well as Pedrosa, and you know what's going to happen. I mean, I was sat there, I was like, they're not coming in. I mean, lap by lap it was going down. It's getting to 4 laps to go, 3 laps to go, and then bang. Danny Pedrosa coming up to this first corner here. A bit of a weird crash, put the brakes on, and the rear just completely went. He just stepped out and down the road he went. His bike slid miles down the road and he had to get up and run after it. He did eventually get back into the pits, but it didn't mean he had to do a whole full lap, because obviously he can't go backwards, so he had to go round again and then go into the pit. Marquez was staying out. He was slowing down to snail's pace, as you'd expect. Then with about 2 laps to go, he crashed, and this is what happened. And he was just going along, he wasn't really going that fast, and then all of a sudden it just went completely, no grip whatsoever. But he was pretty lucky that he did manage to get his bike back up and restart it. And he managed to get back into the pit, but by this time he was down in about 10th, and by the time he pitted and got back out on his bike, as well as Pedrosa, they were 13th and 14th respectively during the race. And it was actually Lorenzo who came out of the pit, and by the time the 2 Hondas made their mistakes with the tyres, Lorenzo was leading. He had about 4-second lead over Alicia Spargaro, and Cal Crutchlow was in 3rd. Lorenzo decided just to go and opened a 3-second, well, another 3-second gap over Alicia Spargaro up to 7.5 seconds come the flag. And it was a really close finish between Alicia Spargaro and Cal Crutchlow. Crutchlow was catching him hand over fist, especially on the last lap, and only just missed out on 2nd spot. But Alicia Spargaro, hats off to him, managed to get 2nd place. Cal Crutchlow, after all the bad luck he's been having this year, and I know he's moving to Honda and Ducati aren't giving him any upgrades, but it's great to see him to get back on the podium. I think he was a bit annoyed that he just missed out on 2nd place, because he did say that if he had short shifted he would have probably got it, but he did spin up a bit. Stefan Bradl, good for him, he managed to get 4th place, so a decent result, he needed that, as did Bradley Smith, who came home in 5th. Polo Spargaro, after a promising start, ended up in 6th. Alvaro Bautista, another 7th place for him. Hiroshi Ayama in 8th, top open Honda. Nicky Hayden, first race back after his operation on his wrist, was 9th, sorry. Scott Redden, 10th. Danilo Petrucci was 11th. DeAngelis got 12th. Marquez 13th. Pedrosa 14th. Hernandez got the last place in 15th. Michael Laverty was 16th. DeMeglio was 17th. Brock Parks 18th. And Hector Barbera 19th. And for those of you that did watch the Moto3 race, I'm going to be kind of discussing the incident between Alex Marquez and Jack Miller in a different video and giving my views on it. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rev nuts off that like button, subscribe to my channel for more MotoGP and MotoGP 14 content, and I shall see you guys in the next race. See you!